From the crossroads of the Ozarks, it's P.I.D. Radio. Welcome, I'm Derek Gilbert.
That makes me Sharon Gilbert, and that means you are in the barn. The dogs are in the house. And that's code.
And the angels have the phone box. Oh, thank you.
The phone box is right over there.
Yeah, well.
You got the Doctor Who
that is right.
bookends over there.
Who was that?
I can't
Nicole?
remember where we got those. May have been Nicole. Forgive me if you sent them to us, but many of you, because you know that we're Whovians, old world Whovians.
That's right.
None
yes,
of
before
this
the
new Who stuff. New Who? No. New Who, boo-hoo.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. If you haven't already, please take a moment and download our free app, which brings all of our content right into your device, whether it's phone, tablet, iOS, Android, Amazon, Kindle Fire.
Don't you want to carry us around with you? Don't you want us sitting there bugging you, watching your every move?
Sending you notifications when we load something new.
We actually don't do that very often. But if you do want to know when Derek uploads a new video, that's how you do it. And that's where you watch it, because I'm telling you, if we make it through the year without somebody we know, including ourselves, being asked to vacate the building when it comes to social media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That happened again to Skywatch TV.
Mm-hmm.
So guarantee we don't get canceled by downloading our app. You'll find it at gilberthouse.org/app or pidradio.com/app, either place. And
a shout out to Subsplash. That's the
yes.
company that created the app, that maintain the app. They host all of the videos.
And the audios.
Mm-hmm.
And that way we won't be canceled from our app. And they are constantly working to improve it as well. They are rolling out an Amazon Fire TV version of the app. So that should be available soon. As soon as that's out, we will let you know, because we've got Fire TVs here and Fire Sticks, and find the interface more user-friendly than Roku. I mean, Roku is not bad, but Amazon Fire TV, the interface is a little bit better.
And the thing is, you can download a Roku app on the Fire TV.
Yeah.
So you can get your Roku. Or you can put a Roku stick on the side. I mean, you can have your cake and eat it too.
Exactly. But make sure we're on all of those, because we got apps for Roku and Apple TV already.
You know, I had cake the other day.
I know.
I know you did.
Yeah.
Woo, it was good. We'll tell you more about that in a minute.
Yeah. Well, plenty to talk about on this week's PID Radio, as we are recording this on the morning of Saturday, March 23rd of 2024. Late last night, Russia time, early this morning, Russia time. They were dealing with a horrific terror attack in Moscow.
Yeah, how many? I mean, we're talking hundreds wounded and over 100. I think it was 133 dead at last count.
That was the report, and it's always interesting to me. I hate to, always wear the foil hat, but when you see something like that, why don't they use a round number? More than 130, more than 30.
Well, I know. What's going on there is, you may think, well, why don't they know? It's because there were incendiary devices used as well as weapons. Right. And these incendiary devices set the building on fire. It was quite a conflagration.
It was.
So there were, I think I read that there was an accelerant that was used. Mm-hmm. And so if you think about gas fires, this is essentially what happened there. So they're still in the rubble. They are removing bodies.
Right. As we saw this breaking Friday afternoon, Central Time here in the U.S., it was initially reported 30 dead, and then 40 dead, and then 60 dead. And now, again, as of this morning, Saturday, 133, which, again, you're looking at the numbers 13 and 33 in that number, which...
I'll say again, it may just be the number that was reported. It may
be the actual number. It's just, we see those numbers repeated often in many stories, and we just, okay, interesting.
They are repeated a lot.
Yeah,
you're right.
Higher than statistically probable, but we'll set that aside, because what's really going on here is how this is going to impact the world. Now, ISIS, or a branch of ISIS called ISIS-K, Islamic State-Khorasan, which is named after an old term for a region in the eastern part of what used to be the area controlled by by Islamists. That would be Turkmenistan, Iran, Afghanistan. ISIS-K took responsibility. This was released through the official Telegram channel, or a Telegram channel at least linked to the Islamic State, called Amok. Why that name? That is the name of the valley near the city of Antakya in Turkey, or Turkey. That is ancient Antioch. The Amuk Valley was, according to the hadiths, which are the sayings that Muhammad purportedly shared with his companions, and then recorded after Muhammad's death. So these are not in the Quran, but according to the hadiths, the Amuk Valley is where the Mahdi will appear and lead Islam to victorious global jihad.
What's interesting about ISIS-K is that they have a branch in Pakistan.
Yeah, the Islamic State was more or less eradicated in Syria, or at least the short-lived caliphate that they set up around the city of Raqqa, which I find interesting because that location is near the ancient city of Tutul on the Euphrates River, near where the Balik River splits off and enters the river from the north. That was one of the centers of the cult of Dagon. Now, those of us who've read the Bible think that Dagon was exclusively a Philistine deity. That is not true. He was worshipped throughout the ancient Near East under various names, but Tutul was one of his cult centers. And in my book, The Second Coming of Saturn, I showed that we think this is Shemyaza, the leader of that Watchers Rebellion in Genesis 6, and the destroyer, Apollyon Abaddon. He is a god of the underworld, a god of death. His epithet, his nickname in the texts that have been found at Tutul is Lord of the Corpse, Belpagre, or Lord of the Corpse Offering, or perhaps Lord of Human Sacrifice. So he is he is a very dark entity, and it's interesting that the Islamic State set up their caliphate at a site that was associated with that entity.
Well, I just want to report that as of a couple of minutes ago, the count is now 143 dead. And sadly, that number will probably go up. The question is, we're told, and again, these facts seem to be changing with the time, early last night, or late last night, when we were watching these stories unfold, and again this morning, there were reports that the U.S. intelligence community shared intel with American citizens in the Moscow region, but at least in Russia, but also, allegedly, shared that intel with the FSB, the intelligence services from Russia, that something might happen, and U.S. citizens were told to stay away from large crowds and even concerts.
Yeah, that information was put out on social media, or were shared through the U.S. Embassy in Moscow 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. The FSB has responded. That's the former KGB. The FSB says, no, they didn't tell us anything.
I know. So this morning, our time, President Putin gave a speech in which he implied that Ukraine was somehow involved because supposedly the perpetrators got into a car, maybe multiple cars, because there are as many as 11 of them, and made it through the police checks out of Moscow, made it to the border with Ukraine, and were stopped.
Stopped at the border.
Stopped or observed.
They were trying to get into Ukraine now.
So how did they make it? And it was in a miraculously short amount of time.
Questions about this have been raised right from the get-go, where it's been floated. And bear in mind, we're in the middle of an information war as much as a spiritual war, where it was suggested that perhaps this was a false flag that the Russians have put forward. People have pointed to the apartment bombing early in Putin's tenure that were blamed on Chechens that he then used to escalate the war against the independents, those who were fighting for independence in Chechnya. Is it possible? I don't know. Putin just won re-election. Okay, we can argue about the legitimacy of the election. I think it's interesting seeing those claims coming from the U.S. and the U.K., given that Rishi Sunak was not voted on by the people of the United Kingdom. And, well, we'll just leave the 2020 election here in the United States alone. I mean, if you're listening to this, you probably have an idea of what our thoughts are.
Well, bear in mind also that our own Congress has just passed and sent to Biden for signature, what is it, a $1.3 trillion package that will include more armaments for Ukraine?
Is it in that deal? Because there was a separate bill. It was before Congress that Speaker Johnson had held up. That was like a $90 billion package, $60 billion of it for Ukraine, but another like
for
15
some reason I thought it actually did pass. But you keep talking.
The continuing resolution, which is the omnibus bill. See, Congress is not.
I know they're going to shut down. They say that every year.
Yeah,
they say it twice a year.
Government was supposed to shut down today. In fact.
Yeah, I know.
It's a $1.2 trillion package, features money for Departments of State, Homeland Security, Defense, Labor, Health, and Human Services, funds for foreign operations. I don't know that funding for Ukraine was included in there, but I know that the Biden administration wants another $60 billion for Ukraine, but that's been held up by Speaker Mike Johnson and Republicans in the House who are questioning that kind of spending because it's money we don't have. I mean, if we had the money, if we had the money in the budget.
But honey, we do. Keynesian economics.
Just print more.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
Thanks, Maynard.
Yeah. Again, if the money were there, then we could argue about the wisdom of sending it or not. But the fact is we don't have the money. We have to borrow the money by issuing more government bonds that will be purchased by investors, including the Chinese. And then we'll have to pay that back.
Interesting. Speaking of the Chinese, the UN Security Council just met a couple of days ago. It was yesterday, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Yesterday, the day before. Day before. And the resolution put forward by the United States was to essentially force, quote unquote, peace, a ceasefire in Gaza. Russia and China said no. They have veto power.
Yeah. And they vetoed it because there were things in that bill that they found unacceptable because it would have blamed Hamas and would have forced Hamas to release all the hostages. And Russia and China, the Russian ambassador to the UN in his statement, and I'm paraphrasing, I only caught bits and pieces of it, but essentially was, look, the U.S. put this bill forward knowing that it wasn't going to go anywhere. This is just political theater.
That's what I was going to ask. Is this just a dog and pony show?
Yeah, it is. There are two competing agendas at work in Gaza right now. Netanyahu's agenda, which is apparently to just eliminate Hamas as a threat to the people of Israel, which you can certainly understand. Mm-hmm. I mean, after 9/11, the United States embarked on wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that lasted more than 2 decades.
Terror.
Yeah. We're not going to go to war against a nation state because there is no nation state here. Well, it's the same thing Israel's facing with Hamas. It's not a nation state, but
it's a war on a tactic.
It's a war on a tactic. But the United States now is saying to Israel, you need to stop. Don't go into Rafah. That's that city on the southern border between Gaza and Egypt. There are like 1 million Arabs that are sheltering there in that city. Mm-hmm. But the IDF is like, look, if we don't go in there, Hamas survives with like 3 battalions intact.
Did you see the Guterres?
Yeah. Went to Rafah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that more dog and pony show?
More dog and pony show. They're trying to say Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, but this is the claim that Israel's been committing genocide against the Palestinian Arabs all along. Just look at the population numbers, all right? If this is genocide, it's the worst genocide ever because the number of Palestinian Arabs in Gaza and in Judea and Samaria continues to grow. Mm-hmm. 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 I saw a report the other day on the starvation numbers because the other claim is that they're starving the children of Gaza. Won't somebody think of the children? And yes, their lives have been completely upended thanks to Hamas deciding to go into Israel and kill 1,400 people. But the statistics, assuming these statistics are correct, is about 2.5% of the children at Gaza are nutritionally at risk. They're not getting proper nutrition. But that number is comparable to the same figures in other countries that are ostensibly democratic, open, and free.
I
like
would say
India.
here in the United States, there are probably 2% of kids that are nutritionally at risk.
You're probably right.
In other words, they're not getting the nutrients they need from their diet.
Maybe getting empty carbs.
Yeah.
But just anyway, it's a claim that is not based on reality. Dr. Mike Spalding just posted a piece yesterday at Harbinger's Daily on the anti-Israel movement and how it is spiritual and not, not based on reality, because anti-Israel hatred is a spiritual thing. It is not grounded in reality.
Let me ask you a question. Is the United Nations, do they matter?
Well, I guess it depends on how you define the word matter.
In other words, do they have any power?
No.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Can they force anyone to do anything? The Security Council allegedly is the group with the real power.
Right. But given that you've got three nations, now two of which are aligned against the United States, Russia and China, with veto power, the United States on the other side. But
I thought it was 5.
There are 5 nations that have permanent veto power, the other 2 being France and the UK. And then you've got a rotating group that comes in and out as other members.
Observers.
Yeah. But the other members of the Security Council, but they do not have the power to veto anything. So the United States can essentially block anything. But what has come out now is that if the Biden administration is essentially communicating to Netanyahu and the War Council, if they go into Rafah, the United States may stop defending Israel in the Security Council, which then, the world basically comes against Israel. It's like, gee, where do we see that in prophecy?
I don't know.
Zechariah, Amos, Joel.
Everywhere.
Yeah. And would
the book of everywhere.
Yeah. And also would start putting conditions on how American armaments could be used by Israel. Now, Israel is basically telling the Biden administration to pound sand.
That's the big threat. The problem is we are in an election year.
That's what I was getting at.
And we don't know what's going to happen next year.
Right. Competing agendas. Netanyahu's agenda, as I said, eliminate Hamas. Biden's agenda, get reelected.
Yeah.
And he's looking at the demographics and the polls. And the polls are showing that Latinos are swinging Republican, that Trump, the presumptive nominee for the Republican Party, is doing much better among African Americans, especially men, than in previous election cycles, which is bad news. It's really scaring Democrats. So Biden is trying to shore up his base in a swing state like Michigan, where the Islamic vote could be critical, by coming out and saying, okay, enough is enough in Gaza. You better stop, or we're not going to give you any more bullets or whatever.
Let me ask you another question. With regards to the Moscow attack, the fact that our intelligence community would make the statement that, hey, we told you 2 weeks ago that this was something was being planned, and Russia's saying, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Because it could mean really bad things. In other words, a masterful game being played. We told you, you should have stopped it. Putin can't protect his people. To which Putin would say, you didn't tell us. The fact that you're saying you told us either means you want to weaken me, or you did know something.
Yeah.
Because you were behind it.
Well, that's it. That is the question. Is this being put out there as a justification for widening the war? Just as Russia this past week announced that they've been killing hundreds, and in the case of a couple of nations like Poland, thousands of foreign fighters, mercenaries, or perhaps they're, okay, we're going to say they're mercenaries, but they're not really, in Ukraine, including nearly 500 American soldiers, or American men anyway, but 1,600 Polish men. But this now, assuming they didn't retcon this, but the USembassy.gov site for Moscow posted on March 7th
That's what I heard, that it was either the 7th or the 8th.
Yeah, and it's there on their website, 7 March 2024. The embassy is monitoring reports that extremists have imminent plans to target large gatherings in Moscow to include concerts, and U.S. citizens should be advised to avoid large gatherings over the next 48 hours. Now, again, that was March 7th. The attack took place on March 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
But so even if the CIA did not notify the FSB directly, the fact that this was on the U.S. Embassy website, the Embassy and Consulate website for Russia, the Russians had to know about it.
Yes. You would think so.
Yeah.
If indeed that date is correct.
But I've seen, there actually were reports in American corporate media back a couple of weeks ago saying, oh, Americans have been warned. So somehow those news reports in early March slipped past me. I didn't see them, but you can find them on the web now. New York Post, CNN, et cetera. They did report this back back around March 7th.
Well, let's move away from the possibility of this being a false flag.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, there have been way too many of those. But the idea that ISIS-K is claiming responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
ISIS is the organization, one aspect of ISIS, the original ISIL, as the Brits call them,
mm-hmm.
is the organization that has been behind the revolution, if you want to put it that way, against Bashar Assad.
Mm-hmm.
And Putin has been helping Assad in that fight.
Right.
Therefore, the idea that ISIS wanted to have a major event that would make Putin look really bad, one could understand that.
Yeah.
If one were a terrorist,
mm-hmm.
I suppose as a writer, I try to put myself into the heads of all sorts of entities and people, but I would like to think that, I'd like to think that there weren't people like that at all in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I really would. I would love to think that the world were truly loving and peaceful, but it is not at all. And spiritually speaking, what you were mentioning before, one thing you and I haven't talked about very much is what are the old spirits at work in that huge area that's called Russia?
Mm-hmm. Good question. Good question. And by the way, just for background, I'm going to put a link in the show notes to an article that Raymond Ibrahim put out on March 4th about a statement by the Islamic State released on January 4th on advising true followers of Muhammad to kill Christians wherever you find them. So going back to January 4th, but in that statement, they also condemned the Jews. They condemned Iran because
mm-hmm.
Iran is Shia and Islamic State is fundamentalist Sunni. And they also condemned Hamas because they're trying to set up a nation state, which is not what Muhammad wanted. Muhammad wanted the whole planet. And so anyway, I'll just put that in there just so you understand the mindset of the people behind the Islamic State. They hate everybody who's not part of them and think that they are fulfilling the will of Muhammad by killing everybody. So the spirits in Russia, if we look at the territorial spirits like we see in the book of Daniel, where he was, the angel who brought the message to Daniel was detained by 21 days by the prince of Persia,
mm-hmm.
which is who? Ahura Mazda? There are some who think Mithra. There are some scholars who believe that Ahura Mazda is a Persianized version of Marduk.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Yeah. And that would be because Marduk became the king of the pantheon in what is now Iraq at about
mm-hmm.
the same time that Baal, Satan, was becoming king of the pantheon in the western part of the ancient Near East. So what is now Lebanon, Israel, Western Syria.
Yes, but if you think of the prince of a people,
mm-hmm.
that would be the entity sent down after Babel that took charge of that people group.
Right.
Now, do they war with one another and try to take each other's territory? You bet,
mm-hmm.
because we see the Prince of Greece coming in to knock out the Prince of Persia.
And I think that Baal, who later became known as Zeus and Jupiter, is the Prince of Greece, that he moved his base of operations further west as the center of power moved further west. I would suggest that he is the Prince of the United States.
One one reason, I've done a little bit of research in Russia, and one thing that I find is so interesting is for the longest time, up until Peter the Great, that was really landlocked, literally landlocked. They had no warm water port.
Right.
And they just sort of were insular and didn't send anybody out to the other nations. They didn't let any of the other nations in. They just wanted to live their own isolated, feudal society lives. And then Peter the Great changed it.
Yeah.
And from that point on, whatever spirits were at work in this bubble that was Russia, we'll call it Russia because at one time there were other countries that were taken over, other people groups that became what we know as Russia, that once the communication happened, then communication between the spirits would happen too.
Yeah. And the people that we call the Russians today descend from the Kievan Rus, who were the Varangians, who were Vikings, basically, who came down from what is now Sweden.
Yeah.
They came down, they were trading with the Muslims relatively early on. In fact, there are some scholars who believe that the whole phenomenon of the Vikings was fueled by by the demand from the Muslim world for slaves. So Europeans became the product that the Vikings were transporting and selling to Muslims.
Slavery is not based only on your skin color.
It is not. No.
Can we take you? Can we steal you? Are you useful?
Yeah.
And a lot of the young, beautiful women, especially the blonde women, were coveted.
Yes, they were. I wrote about that in Bad Moon Rising and citing research of scholars. There's a professor at, I know they call it the Ohio State University, who wrote a book on this. Yeah, I know. They make a big deal of it. It's, Ohio State. No, it's the Ohio State University. Okay, go Buckeyes.
Is there another one?
Well, so Ohio University, I guess, but the Bobcats, not in the same league as the Buckeyes. He wrote a book on this and found that between the time of Henry VIII and George III, so about 1520 to about 1780, 1530 to 1780, 250-year period, there was something like, what was it? 1 million Europeans who were hauled off. Yeah, it was 1 million Europeans who were,
don't often see that portrayed in movies.
No, enslaved by Muslims, and many of them, there was a Muslim enclave on a small island off the coast of Cornwall, southwest coast of Cornwall, in the 1680s.
Wow.
So, and that was about the time that Jan Sobieski saved Vienna from the Ottoman Turks. But this is a very long, very old war. Who did the Kievan Rus worship before Vladimir the Great, who is the one? He's the Great because he converted to Christianity and forced his kingdom based in Kiev to convert.
Well, I'm going to assume that it was some variation of Thor.
The Norse pantheon, Odin and Thor and those. Probably right. And I would suggest that Odin is just another cognate for Kronos, Saturn, Shemiyaza, the destroyer.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to answer one of your questions, and we'll also talk a little bit about Israel and more.
Yes, straight ahead on P.I.D. Radio. It's a new month, and we have a new special at the Gilbert House online store.
We have a crazy, crazy deal on all of our DVDs. They are, regardless of the retail price, they are 75% off.
We keep hearing from the kids these days that everything is going to streaming video, that DVDs are old school.
Oh, not for us.
No, we are old school. And besides, we don't trust the internet will always be there. So take advantage of this special offer. Everything from our travel-ogumentaries. Basically follow us as we go through the Holy Land and show you the important sites at Ground Zero on this supernatural war, plus video teachings, presentations, and much, much more.
With 75% off savings on all the DVDs, as many as you want to get, you've got the money that you saved to go out and buy a DVD player.
That's it. Take advantage of it now, online only at the Gilbert House store, gilberthouse.org/store. And thank you for your prayers and support. Welcome back to P.I.D. Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and I'm craving cake. We got to spend some time with our good friend Carl Gallups the other day, and went to Flat Creek Restaurant, which is about 10 minutes from our house. And I very rarely get a dessert. But for some reason, I thought, I'm getting a dessert.
Yes.
And I had cake. And I want some more.
Carl comes to town and everything just goes right out the window.
Everything just goes crazy. That's how it is when Carl Gallups is around.
Well, when you've got something sweet, you need some good coffee to wash it down to balance it out.
No, it's
you
good
can
segue.
Find it at the Gilbert House store, gilberthouse.org/store. Right there on the front page, you'll find links to the 3 blends, soon to be 4, offered through our partners at Kevlar Joe's Coffee. Nick Fisher at Kevlar Joe's has developed 3 blends that you will really enjoy. We've tried them all and we love them.
We love all
absolutely.
3 of them.
You can get it ground or in whole bean.
I like the whole bean.
Yeah, we grind our own. And I say we, and by we I mean Sharon. And that is just absolutely delicious. There are 2 medium roasts. One is the flavored cookies and cream blend called Amazing Grace.
I love that. It's just a hint, and it's just exactly right for me.
There's a very smooth Sumatran blend that we call Snarling Dachshund in honor of the late Sam T. Dachshund. That is a wonderful, Sumatran beans are amazing.
They are so good.
And then the dark roast, Derek's Bunker Buster for a view from the bunker, inspired by a view from the bunker. That's our favorite because we like that dark roast Colombian. But you can choose your favorite and go to the links to the website, gilberthouse.org/store, take you right to Kevlar Joe's, and you can order direct from them.
And while you're there, through the end of this month, through March the 31st, you'll be able to get 75% off any and all of our DVDs. Crazy.
Yep, that through the end of the month. And then we've got a special on our books coming in April.
I know, April and May. So you want to go to the store every once in a while, see what's going on. We are going to go back to Israel. It is the Solidarity Tour, and we're only taking about 20 people. We need to know sometime very soon, just so Aaron can reserve the rooms, whether or not you want to go.
Yes. So you find out more at gilberthouse.org/travel. The itinerary is there for the Solidarity mission, which I just happen to have right here.
I see that.
Rush Limbaugh used to do that whenever he had something he wanted to announce. He'd just take a piece of paper, just holding here in my sweaty hands. This itinerary will take us to some very powerful sites. The Hostage Square exhibit at, I don't know if you call it exhibit, I think memorial is probably
I think it's a memorial, and I think also the memorial that, are you talking about the one that is memorial to the, what am I trying to say, the music festival site?
Well, the Nova Festival exhibition, but then the Hostage Square, which is really
where they have the table set up.
Yes, and also, and we haven't talked about this, a hotel visit to people who've been displaced from both the south and the north, because the northern area has been evacuated because of the proximity to Hezbollah.
Oh, wow!
And there'll be some gifts dispersed there to help with the communities who are been forced out of their homes. We'll go down to the south in the Negev. We'll go to visit Sderot, Re'im, Nir Oz, which are all communities that were attacked on October 7th, have a barbecue with IDF soldiers. We'll, on Friday, May 10th, going to Gush Etzion.
Oh, that is such a powerful place.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'll tell you what, we're seeing a repeat of the kinds of activities and geopolitical wranglings that were taking place in 1948. So yes, Gush Etzion. You want to go there.
Absolutely. And then in Jerusalem, we'll visit all the sites that you would want to see. The Mount of Olives, the Temple Mount.
Yeah, and we'll go to some
Wall.
places that no one else takes you to.
Yes, the historic locations of the crucifixion and the resurrection. And of course, at all of these places, we won't be...
we're not going there to proselytize. We are going there to show we love you who live in the land. We love you, the Jewish people. And to try to... It's called a solidarity tour for a reason.
Yeah.
Do we still pray for them? Yes, we'll be praying at the Western Wall. If someone asks you a question, wants to engage, fine. But we're not going there. Hey, guess what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We understand that nobody gets a special dispensation. No one comes to the Father except through Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
But we know a day is coming when they will look on him whom they have pierced and mourn.
And our job is to show first and foremost love.
Amen. Amen. So you can find out more at our website, gilberthouse.org/travel. The link there takes you to the Lipkin Tours website, and we pray that we see you in the Holy Land.
We do. Boy, the question, before we get on and talk about more Russia stuff, can you find a question from the app?
Yeah. Here's a good one from Shelley. This is an interesting one. It came in a week ago. And so, Shelley, thank you for sending this in. She's very active on the app. She asked, what is the consensus on Lilith?
Ooh,
I have a difficult time believing this Jewish apocrypha. It seems as though it's fallen lies and deception.
Oh, is she talking about the Lilith and Adam thing?
Right, the Lilith and Adam thing. So I think that is a really good question because there are stories that have popped up about Lilith and her relationship with Adam, but Lilith is known from Mesopotamian texts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. She was not Adam's first wife.
She was not.
She was not. Eve was made from Adam and for Adam. They were for each other, and Lilith is simply a fallen angel that likes to lie.
That is true. Lilith appears in the Bible in Isaiah 34, verse 14, where the word is translated as night bird.
Mm-hmm.
But like a lot of demonic or fallen entities in the Old Testament, they are not transliterated. Their names are not transliterated into English directly. They're translated as plague or pestilence or hail or terror, or in this case, night bird.
Wasn't there, and maybe it's extra biblical, a Lilithim? As in the followers of Lilith or others that were like her?
Yes. And I'm looking at the Dictionary of Deities and Demons in the Bible, which is a wonderful scholarly text.
You need it. If you really want to dig into the original language and figure out what these names mean, like Lilith, that's your source.
Yeah, it's not cheap, but it is a valuable resource that we use almost every day. The Hebrew term Lilith is connected by popular etymology with the word Leila, meaning night, but it is more probably a loan word from Akkadian, Lilitu, which is derived from a Sumerian word. Mm-hmm. So as with many other things in Scripture, if we assume that the original word is Hebrew instead of looking at similar languages or even loanwords from neighboring countries like Egyptian, we can sometimes be sent in the wrong direction.
If Enlil means Lord of the Air, and we don't know if it does or not, that would mean Lil means air. Or
right. That's what it does mean.
Yeah, which is where you get nightbird.
Right, but the scholars who had assumed for many, many years, the scholarly community, the consensus was that Enlil, Lord Wind or Lord Ether, it is now becoming the majority opinion that it actually is the Akkadian Elil was the original, and that's Il-Ilu, meaning God of gods.
Which is why I mentioned what I did. I wonder if Lilith is somehow associated with Enlil.
Oh, interesting. Lilith is mentioned in the Epic of Gilgamesh, or the story Gilgamesh, Enkidu, and the Netherworld, where Inanna plants a tree hoping to cut from its wood the material she needs to build a throne. But as the tree grows and snake makes its nest in its roots, and the evil bird Anzu settles in the top, and in the trunk the demon Lilith makes her lair in the trunk. So this is from the term Lil. You're right. It is connected to the winds, sort of like Pazuzu was a demon of the desert winds.
You know, it's really interesting, that story in the Gilgamesh epic, because it reminds me of the Isis-Osiris epic, where Osiris has been tricked into a coffin.
Yeah.
The coffin goes into the river takes it away, it ends up being caught in a tree, and the tree cut down. That's how she ends up finding him.
Right.
But not the 14th part.
And interestingly, that tree was at Byblos in Lebanon.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of interconnection between the Amorite world, the Aegean, and the Egyptians.
Yes, so that's a really brilliant question. Thank you for asking that. We do not have a definitive answer.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of questions amongst our own answer. So I think I would advise you get that Dictionary of Deities and Demons if you can find a copy. And if you can afford a copy, you can also get a PDF copy of it.
There's some that are floating around on the web. I don't know if they were legitimate.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm saying you can't necessarily get one legitimately.
Yeah, the copy we've got is with Logos Bible Software.
Yes, exactly, which is why we paid for it. But I like the digital copy because it's searchable.
Searchable, right, exactly. So anyway, according to the Mesopotamian text, Lilith and those with her were sort of a category of demons who had no husband, almost like incubi and succubi, the demonic.
Oh.
Right.
Nightbird really.
Right.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah. The texts refer to them as the ones who have no husband or as the ones who stroll about searching for men to ensnare them or to enter the house of a man through the window.
Yeah, boy, this is sounding more and more like an incubus. This is the kind of thing that incubus would be the male. It would be a succubus.
Succubus, right.
We should probably ask Vicki Joy Anderson about this if she's done more research.
Yeah. So anyway, this kind of encounter that these Lilitu want is not the kind that you would.
No.
In a way, it's sort of like the sirens of the Odysseus myth. They seduce men.
Toad.
Yeah. They seduce men and then destroy them, kill them. So that's.
So yeah, that's a really good question.
So the Jewish Apocrypha, not accurate, but Lilith is an entity known from Mesopotamian texts.
By the way, as we're recording this is the weekend of Purim.
Yeah.
Purim, that means lots. Didn't they draw lots or throw lots to? Boy, you're going to have to edit this because I'm trying to remember how that is.
The 14th of Adar. It means literally lots. You are correct. Identify with Hegorol, the lot from Esther chapter 3, verse 7, but perhaps from the Akkadian Puru, meaning stone, which is probably a loan word from Sumerian.
Probably.
Yeah, but that you're right. It is lots.
Interesting too that she was married to Xerxes, if I remember correctly. She was married to Ahasuerus.
Yes.
It was Xerxes.
Yeah, that's Ahasuerus is the Greek form of the name, if I'm not mistaken.
So yes, she was married to the Prince of Persia.
How about that?
Or the human version, who was probably, even today, I don't know how much of it goes on, but there was a time when if you became king, you were essentially married to a goddess, or you were sort of the human version of the god. And therefore you had to worship him. So he would have worshipped the Prince of Persia. Yeah,
and you had that ritual, the sacred marriage, where you had to consummate.
Yeah, and if you don't please the goddess, well, guess you're not king anymore.
Yeah. Well, no pressure.
No pressure at all. Hey, get in there. But Russia, that is an ongoing story. Another story that has nothing to do with Russia whatsoever, but is really weird. And we don't have a whole lot of time left, but this is the story of studies into and observations and more cases of prosopometamorphosis.
I thought you were going there.
Metamorphopsia.
Yeah. Or just
prosopometamorphopsia. I cannot say that again.
You're a better person. We just call it PMO.
PMO.
That's what the official
not PMS. This is PMO.
PMO. Yeah.
And it's where you do not see correctly. In that, if I were looking at Derek, I wouldn't recognize him as a human face, a human being.
Yeah.
I would see a distortion of his features. Now that there are some neurological diseases where you cannot even recognize faces. Every face looks the same to you. There are other diseases, which is a proprioception issue. You cannot recognize your own body. you might think your foot belongs to someone else, and so you're trying to get rid of this dead foot that's in your bed. There are actual cases of that, but this is where you might think, and often in the literature that I've read, if I were looking at you and I had PMO, your eyes would be huge and black.
Yeah.
It's like you were turning into an alien.
I shared this online, and a friend of ours, Dr. Timothy Furnish, who's been a guest on The View from the Bunker here recently, and is also a big scholar of Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings, Silmarillion, that sort of thing. He's written a book on the political history of Middle-earth. His comment was the images that were created by the researchers at Dartmouth who did this study based on a 58-year-old man suffering from PMO. They asked him to describe, he had a kind of a unique case. Normally when people look at human faces, people with this condition, they see these horribly twisted, evil-looking, demonic. That's the best word for it. But in his case, he could look at a picture and it would be normal. But when he looked at the person of whom the picture was taken, that face would be twisted.
That is really interesting.
And so he was able to work with researchers to get them to create, using manipulated photos of a volunteer, what he was seeing. You know, so basically like the police artist sketch or something. Yeah. And so anyway, I shared this article from the Daily Mail, and Tim's response was, they're orcs. And you're right.
Can you say that?
Well, I know it is kind of bigoted, but he's not wrong. I mean, the images, the eyes are much wider and black. The mouth stretches almost, from jawbone to jawbone, and the ears are now elongated and pointed, like elf ears almost.
Demonic.
Or demonic. They do look like demonic faces. So the question is this: What if people with PMO are seeing what's really there? Now, I don't know. You
don't need a pair of glasses to see it, but there are many who believe that, and I personally do believe that entities that we can't see that are part of the unseen realm, fallen angels, demons, can take on forms that we would be able to perceive, so they could look like a human being, or they could look like a not human being, or they could look like a monster.
Now, not having read the study from the researchers at Dartmouth, I don't know how many cases they analyzed.
Well, the paper in front of me, they reviewed 83 cases.
83 cases. The researcher that or the people that they worked with at Dartmouth were able to look at an image and see the image normally, but then they would look at the person whose picture they were looking at, and they would compare the two until they were able to manipulate the image so it matched what they were seeing in the flesh.
How interesting. How horrible.
It really, I mean, if you're going around and you're seeing everybody around you who looks like this evil-looking monster, the question is, how many people did they run past it? Did they see everybody this way, or are there some people they don't see this way?
Well, I haven't read the entire study, and there are other studies. This is a rare condition.
Yeah.
There may well be a neurological, cause for this. So jumping to they're seeing demons, possible, but not the only answer.
Right. And the lead author of the study did say that in most cases of PMO, people cannot see images correctly. The images that they see are also distorted.
Right.
So this was unique.
The first case that I can find was about a century ago. And it turned out that person had a lesion.
Oh.
So there was a part of the brain that wasn't working correctly. And this was picked up at the end of an epileptic seizure.
Okay.
So there are types of epilepsy that will make your life seem as if you are living in a hellish atmosphere, where you see everyone as demons and you're convinced that everyone is trying to kill you. Look, I write fiction. I can see where a scenario like that would be explained by saying they're simply seeing the unseen realm.
Yeah.
And that's possible. I think the late Mike Heiser would say, yes, that's possible. Is it probable? Don't know.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the neurological. Let's try to find an organic reason for this first.
Mm-hmm.
And if that does not exist, then yes, let's look at the meta-organic or the supernatural.
Right. Eliminate the physiological possibilities, and that may be responsible for many of these cases. And some of these patients, sadly, diagnosed with psychosis.
Yeah, well, you would.
You're just crazy. Instead of looking at a physiological cause, there may be something going on in the brain or the optic nerve, who knows, that is causing this. But again, what a terrible thing you have to live with, where everyone you see around you's got this really, I mean, because these are disturbing.
And the question is, was this sudden onset or was this from birth?
Yeah. Yeah, don't know. Don't know. But again, just looking at it and thinking, all right, what if they're not crazy? And what if this is not physiological? Is it possible? I mean,
we live in a world where we're surrounded by beings we can't see.
And as the book of Hebrews tells us that some have entertained angels unawares.
There's a great cloud of witnesses.
Yeah. We may not see them and recognize them for what they are around us. So, well, it's just one of those things that struck me when that story popped up. It's like, what if?
So here's my question. Should I bake a cake?
And should it be a cheesecake?
Oh, well, we have a cheesecake in the freezer. I could always get that out.
Well, there you go. That'd be the simplest thing.
That's the emergency cheesecake, though. I did.
In case of emergency, break cheesecake glass.
Yes. Oh gosh. Well, we will not be having Gilbert House Fellowship tomorrow morning. It is Palm Sunday. And the following Sunday is Easter Sunday. So this is our last foray together for a couple of weeks. Derek and I are going to try to get some writing done. I am happy that many of you who placed orders, all of you who placed orders, were happy enough to wait so I could ship those out. The shipping office is 99% moved out here. Just a few boxes that we need to move.
Yeah, and a couple of pieces of furniture to assemble yet. We've got another desk there for packing and another shelf unit. Yeah, there we go.
That thing.
Nouns.
Another noun thing.
Yeah. My brain translates nouns into these distorted, demonic-looking words. Yeah.
It's a thing. Thing works for me.
Oh, man.
VFTB tomorrow night?
VFTB tomorrow night is Troy Anderson and Paul Begley.
Oh, they've got a book together.
They do. Troy is very busy because coming up in a few weeks, going to have Troy with Colonel David Giamono. They've got a new book coming out as well. But Paul and Troy, their new book is out this coming week. It's called Revelation 911, which has a meaning, obviously, for Americans. 911, that's the emergency number you dial when, you need immediate first responders. But also Revelation 9:11 is the verse where the abyss opens up and the king, over those in the bottomless pit, the angel of the bottomless pit, Apollyon, Abaddon, emerges with his horde of demonic, fallen angel followers. So that was a very interesting discussion.
Boy, howdy.
Talk about Agenda 2030, the Great Reset, the upcoming total eclipse, April 8th.
Yeah, you and I are going to be down in Dallas for that.
And Paul will be there as well.
Yeah, I know, isn't he?
Paul and Heidi Begley.
I have missed them. I love them so much.
Yeah.
Got to get him to sing.
Yeah. Oh, man. He is a wonderful, wonderful singer.
He really is.
And this is his first book. Troy partnered with him in bringing the book to fruition. It's been 2 years in the making. So that'll be tomorrow night's View from the Bunker.
Wonderful. And as I said, no Gilbert House Fellowship for the next 2 Sundays, but Derek and I have to record some Unraveling Revelations, so we'll be busy.
Yeah. We got at least we've got starting to build a little bit of a backlog. So we're
slowly. One of the things that I want to talk about actually on Unraveling is, and I know that we've discussed the great multitude that appear in heaven in I think it's Revelation 7, but they all have palm branches in their hands. You brought that up. Tomorrow's Palm Sunday.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago you meant that a few days ago rather, and I was like, wait a minute.
I know. Was that always in there?
We kind of skipped right over that.
I know.
We talked about.
Yeah, so we'll probably touch on that in Unraveling Revelation. And those of you who enjoy Gilbert House and all the other things, thank you.
Yes. I'm glad I got the backlog edited for the upcoming Unravelings, because the next program we're going to talk about head shaping.
Oh, yeah.
Head shaping in the ancient world.
We did promise that, didn't we?
Yeah. Wrote about that in The Great Inception. So I'll be bringing that research back out.
Yeah.
Not something a lot of scholars want to talk about, but the fact is that it appears to have been universal in the possibly pre-flood era, but certainly in the pre-literate area, before the invention of writing around 3100 BC, in what they called the Ubaid culture and the pre-Ubaid cultures, Natufian and Halaf. Those cultures, basically going back to about 10,000 BC, everybody in the ancient biblical lands appear to have been trying to shape their heads to look like cones.
You have to wonder what they're emulating. So we will talk more about that on Unraveling Revelation. And if you are interested in that, that's one of the many programs you can get on the app.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So have a blessed weekend. Thank you for listening. And until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
P.I.D. Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @P.I.D. Radio, or the P.I.D. Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.